Acharya Ashtottara Shata Shushima on His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki. Anatakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the sum of devotees. All glories to the sum of devotees. All glories to the sum of devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from, yeah, thank you. I want it like kind of lower so I can like read. Yeah, like that. That's okay. Here's good. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 5, verse number 5. Atman bhavayase tani na parabhavayan svayam atma shaktim avashtabhya urnanabhir ivaklamaha atman bhavayasi tani na parabhavayan svayam atma shaktim avashtabhya urnanabhir ivaklamaha atman bhavayasi tani na parabhavayan svayam atma shaktim avashtabhya urnanabhir ivaklamaha atman bhavayasi tani na parabhavayan svayam atma shaktim avashtabhya urnanabhir ivaklamaha. Please repeat. Mataji's. Atman, Atmani, by self. Bhavayasye, manifest. Tani, all those. Na, not. Parabhavayan, being defeated. Swayam, yourself. Atma Shaktim, self sufficient power. Avashtabhya, being employed. Urnanabhihi, the spider. Eva, like. Aklamaha, without help. Translation and purport by His Divine Glory Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. As the spider very easily creates the network of its cobwebs and manifests its power of creation without being defeated by others, so also you yourself, by employment of your self-sufficient energy, create without any other's help. Purport: the best example of self-sufficiency is the sun. The sun does not require to be illuminated by any other body. Rather, it is the sun which helps all other illuminating agents. For in the presence of the sun, no other illuminating agent becomes prominent. Narada compared the position of Brahma to the self-sufficiency of the spider, who creates its own field of activities without any other's help by employment of its own energetic creation of saliva. Om Agyanatimirandasya Gananjana Shalakya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manubhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadahmayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vande Ham Shri Guru Shri Tapatakalam Shri Guru and Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagarjatam Sagana Rakanatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Prijna Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagat Pete Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhi Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranama Mehari Priye Vansha Kalpatubhyascha Kripasindubhye Vachapatita Nam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Putale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Putale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Sarasvati Devi Gauravani Pasharne Nirvishesha Shunvali Paschatya Dishitarne Bhutera Mahadbiri Imafpuro Vibor Niramaya Shiti Amusha Purashaha Bhungti Gunan Shudashadmakaha Solang Shishta Bhagavan Vachamsime. So I'm going to take the liberty during the next verse as well, since the purport is short and the two verses are connected. Text 6. Naham vida param yasmin, na param na samam vibho, nama rupa guner bhavyam, sad asat kinchid anyataha. Whatever we can understand by the nomenclature, characteristics, and features of a particular thing, superior, inferior, or equal, eternal, or temporary, is not created from any other source other than that of your lordship, thou so great. Purport: the manifested world is full of varieties of created beings and others. And in human society, the human being is considered to be the superior living being. And amongst the human beings, there are also different varieties: good, bad, equal, etc. But Narada Muni took for granted that none of them has any other source of generation besides his father, Brahmaji. Therefore, he wanted to know all about them from Lord Brahma. So, obviously, we're still in the same section of Narada Muni questioning Lord Brahma and asking, showing, just almost pretending he knows, but Narada Muni believing that Lord Brahma is the supreme all in all of the universe. He's the primordial creator. And so he's asking, as the verse 7 will say, but we think, Narada Muni says to Lord Brahma, but we think that there's somebody other than you. So basically here, Narada Muni is asking about creation. And all of this is in reply originally to Maharaj Parikshit's question to Shukadev Goswami. So first, the previous verse, So he says, as a spider very easily creates the network of its cobwebs and manifests its power of creation without being defeated by others, so also you yourself, by employment of your self-sufficient energy, create without any other's help. So it's a very nice glorification Narada Muni is making of Lord Brahma, but it's not exactly true. Because we understand Lord Brahma, he creates by the agency of Lord Vishnu's energy, by Lord Krishna's energy. Specifically, Lord Brahma, he was benedicted the creative energy, as we read in the third canto, after undergoing tapasya or austerities for 100 divine years. So Lord Brahma, the source of his energy is Lord Krishna. He's not self-sufficient in and of himself, even though this word, Atma Shaktim, is used. self-sufficient. But this self-sufficient power, the power is under his control, but is not manifest in him. That power is delegated to him by Lord Vishnu. So, and also too, we see that Brahma can't be the supreme all in all because he's also influenced by this energy he's given. We see in the third canto, I believe, that he's different situations, but we see prominently how the incident of him chasing after his own daughter, I believe, of him becoming covered over and his mind bewildered by the mode of passion, rajas. Similarly, in the third canto, uh, somewhat early on, we see how Lord Brahma, out of anger, although he controlled it, he generated Rudra when the four Kumaras refused to beget progeny. So similarly, too, again, there's the story of, I always forget his name, he's in the 10th canto, who kicked Lord Narayan. Bhrigu Muni, who disrespected Lord Brahma, and Lord Brahma also became angry. Although, I believe Lord Brahma became angry in the mind, if I'm not mistaken, but he controlled it. I believe Lord Shiva, he was a bit more external. So that anger is there, in other words. This anger and this mode of passion becomes manifest in the mind of Brahma simply by the fact that Lord Brahma took his birth from the lotus flower. We can understand that he's influenced by the modes of material nature because he has a birth. Birth in and of itself is of the nature of passion, or this act of creation is of the nature of passion. So Brahma can't be taken as the supreme because he's influenced by the energy. In that case, you must take the energy as supreme, as logical. So, but Lord Vishnu, the real owner of the energy, so the energy is greater than Lord Brahma because he's controlled by it in some senses, but the real ultimate is obviously Vishnu, as already been explained so many times before. Namav Parasmai Purashaya Bhuyasi, that he is the original person. So similarly too, Lord Vishnu is glorified, or Lord Krishna specifically, he's glorified by the demigods in the 10th canto. They say, Tvam eka ivasa sutuf prasutis, tvam sinidhanam, tvam anugrahashta, tvam maya samvrittachittasas, tvam pashanti na vipashtituye. So Srila Prabhupada gives the translation, the cause of this material world manifested with as many varieties as the original tree is you, O Lord. You are also the maintainer of this material world, and after annihilation, you are the one in whom everything is conserved. Those who are covered by your external energy cannot see behind this manifestation, but theirs is not the vision of learned devotees. So, on this significantly here, they say, Tvan maya samvrita chittasis tvam pashanti na vipashtate. So similarly to Queen Kunti Devi, she says, Tataparamahamsa nam munina mamalatmanam bhakti yoga vitanantam. No, not that one. Maya javani kachanam agya doksha jamaviyam nalakshasi mudhadrisha nato dharo yatha. That Lord Krishna, he acts as if a dancer on a stage or an actor in a play. And those who are mudhas, simply put, just as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, those who are mudhas, they can't understand that behind this creative energy, behind this external show of the illusionary energy, there's a supreme person there. That there's a supreme God, a supreme controller there. Those who are less intelligent, they either take to atheistic principles, just like I was just seeing. So in this verse today, this word avashtabhya is used, and I recognize that. So that's the same thing. Krishna says it many times in the Bhagavad Gita, actually, but he says, one verse that was coming to my mind, Itam drishtim avashtabhya nashtat mano buddhayaha prabhavanti ugra karmanaha kshayaya jagato hitaha. So this is from the 16th chapter of the Gita, Krishna talking about the demoniac. He says, following such conclusions, the demoniac who are lost to themselves, have no intelligence, engage in unbeneficial, horrible works meant to destroy the world. So Krishna says in the Gita elsewhere, namam duskritino mudha prabhadyante naradamaha maya pritagyana asanam bhavamashita. These four classes of men, specifically these atheistic classes of men, they can't ever understand that there's a supreme controller. They can't enter into the understanding that there's a superior force to them, what to speak of that there is a supreme person controlling everything. And even those who are kamasteste hritagyana prabhadyante nya devataha, Tam tam niyamamastaya prakrita. What is it? Niyatasvaya? Something like that. They surrender unto demigods. Why do they surrender unto demigods? Because their mind is distorted by the mode of passion, because they're disturbed by material desires. So these sorts of people, whose vision is covered over by the illusory energy, they can't understand that Krishna is supreme, Vishnu is supreme. Therefore, they take into this understanding, not so prominent here in the West, but this, at least amongst Hindus, and some people are into neo-Hinduism, they accept this understanding of either three divinities, meaning Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, or they take to worship a Panchopasana, and they add in Surya and I believe Durga, if I'm not mistaken, or is it Ganesh? I forget. Anyway, they take to these worship of demigods. They surrender unto demigods, and they don't accept, even those who worship the Panchopasana, they worship Vishnu, but they worship Vishnu as on the same level of demigods. Therefore, it's offensive. So similarly, too, those who accept the three divinities of Brahma, Shiva, and Vishnu, still they think Vishnu to be a material demigod. And actually, you see people who accept like this. Generally, it's explained, and the general misconception is that there's Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, and they're all just different aspects of Brahman, which has no form, no personality like this. So these people are less intelligent, because they can't understand that Krishna is actually controlling everything. They can't understand how there's, as very logical actually, the point is made by Yudhishthir Maharaj. It's either to Yudhishthir Maharaj to, Narada Muni to Yudhishthir Maharaj, or it's either by the relation of the snake-like Avadut, who's like lying in the forest in the 7th canto. So the example is given there, just like the reflection of a sun upon water. So that reflection of the sun, it's an illusion. It doesn't exist. The real sun's in the sky. But just because the reflection of the sun is false, it doesn't mean the sun is false. In fact, logically speaking, it means there has to be a real sun in the sky. Otherwise, how is there a reflection possible? Similarly, too, the same logic. There has to be a supreme personality with form, quality, characteristics, activities, varieties, because varieties are seen in this material world. This material world may be taken as false, as explained in the Bhagavatam so many times, as well as the Gita, but there has to be an original prototype, Srila Prabhupada used the word in the spiritual world. There has to be an original substance from which the illusion comes from. Otherwise, there's no meaning. If there's just an impersonal existence beyond personality cannot come from the impersonal, simply put. So it doesn't make sense to have this kind of conception that these three demigods, they come from some impersonal source. Rather, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, what is that? Brahmano pratishtoham, that I am the basis of the impersonal Brahman. This impersonal existence is simply my bodily, constitutes my bodily rays. This impersonal Brahman, it rests upon me. So, this is the position of the more intelligent, of the devotees who can understand things as they are. So, even Lord Brahma, he says himself, this is, so many different times actually, Lord Brahma, he offers prayers at least 3 times. In the Bhagavatam, to my knowledge, he will offer them in 3:9, 10:14, and again in, what's the other chapter? I'm just forgetting the 3rd chapter. But he offers prayers 3 times in the Bhagavatam. So this is from 10:14. Lord Brahma's almost as if apologetic prayers to Lord Krishna after he tried to show up Krishna by his own mystic power. So he says, Atreva Maya Dharmana Vatari, Hiyasya Prapanchasya Bahi Sputasya, Kritsnasya Chantar Jata Jananya, Mayatvam Eka Prakati Kritam Te. So Lord Brahma, there's many different prayers and many nice prayers in that section, 10:14, many which are famous. But Lord Brahma, he says here, my dear Lord, in this incarnation, you have proved that you are the supreme controller of Maya. Although you are now within this universe, the whole universal creation is within your transcendental body. A fact demonstrated by exhibiting the universe within your abdomen before your mother, Yashoda. So Lord Brahma himself, he accepts so many times in the Bhagavatam that it's accepted from the very beginning of the Bhagavatam. Teni Brahma Hridaya Adi Kavi Mohanti Yat Suryaha, that from Lord Brahma was instructed within the heart. So Lord Brahma, in so many different ways, in so many different prayers throughout the Bhagavatam, he accepts that Vishnu is his father. Elsewhere, within the same section, there's some prayer like that I don't have the Sanskrit memorized, but it's something saying something to the effect. Lord Chaitanya, he quoted it when he was explaining the Atmaram verse. He is saying something to the effect. Lord Brahma is saying, my dear Lord Krishna, are you not my father Narayan? And therefore, shouldn't you be merciful? Just as a father is merciful upon to his misbehaved children, so similarly, please show your mercy upon me. So Lord Brahma, significantly in this statement, are you not my father Narayan? So Lord Brahma, in so many different ways, has accepted that Lord Vishnu or Lord Krishna is the source of his existence, as is described vividly in this canto as well near the end, the Chatur Shloka Bhagavatam, as well as the beginning of the third canto. So Srila Prabhupada, in one purport of the 10th canto, he says, the persons who are not in real knowledge think that Brahma is the creator, Vishnu the maintainer, and Shiva the annihilator, and that the different demigods are intended to fulfill diverse purposes. Thus, they create different purposes and worship various demigods to have these purposes fulfilled. And again, he quotes this, Kamasteste hrityagyanaf prapadyati nyadevataha, they surrender unto different demigods. A devotee, however, knows that these various demigods are but parts of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that these parts need not be worshipped. So, as we understand from the elsewhere, much later in the Bhagavatam, Devarshi Bhutapta Pitri Vitrinam, Nakinkaro Rajan, I'm hasty on this, I'm dusty on the Sanskrit there, but the translation is famous, that anybody who engages in the worship of Lord Krishna, for him, he's fulfilled all debts in life. There is no debt he needs to fulfill. He's already worshipped all demigods, all forefathers. He's wrapped up all debts that he has to society, to his parents, like that. So, by worship of the Lord, automatically all these parts of the worship of these demigods is fulfilled, which is necessary because otherwise, without, as explained in the Gita, is that the demigods, they fulfill so many different necessities of our life. Simply put, they give us rain. From that rain, so many crops are produced, and the whole human civilization and society goes on. So just as when one man does something for another man, he's naturally in debt. So similarly, humanity is in debt in so many different ways to the demigods, to this and that, specifically for the demigods. So unless there is some sort of yagya performed, a sacrifice performed on part of the demigods, or in oblations given to the demigods, then there gradually enters chaos into society, namely, prominently by a lack of rain. But all these things are fulfilled simply instead of observing these sad Vedic rituals, in which are necessary, arguably, simply by worshiping Lord Krishna, and specifically in this age, engaging in the Sankirtan Yagya, all other purposes of Yagya are fulfilled, and everything is seen after. So this aspect of creation. So these two verses, they deal with this, that these verses are applicable to Lord Brahma. You're spoken to Lord Brahma, but you could take it just the same as if it was spoken to Lord Krishna himself. As the spider very easily creates the network of its cobweb and manifests its power of creation without being defeated by others, so also you yourself, by employment of your self-sufficient energy, create without any other's help. Actually, this is more applicable to Lord Krishna. And furthermore, he says, whatever we can understand by the nomenclature, characteristics, and features of a particular thing, superior, inferior, or equal, eternal, or temporary, it is not created from any source other than that of your lordship, thou so great. So this verse isn't technically wrong. Although Brahma, he didn't create eternal, you can't create anything eternal. But Lord Brahma, he did create the different distinctions like this, like inferior, equal, good, bad, neutral, like this. I'll get into this a little bit more, the details of creation. But first, we should understand the creation in general. It plays a very large role in the Bhagavatam, actually. Practically from the first canto throughout the whole Bhagavatam, arguably, but because the Manus are coming there. But prominently through canto 1 through canto 4, creation is described in detail. There's what's called there's Sarga, Visarga, and then there's just like the 10 topics of the Bhagavatam. So there's, as Srila Prabhupada gave it the name, so first canto is creation, second canto is the cosmic manifestation, third canto the status quo, talking about mainly maintenance, I believe, and then fourth canto, creation of the fourth order. So what does that mean? Creation of the fourth order. What happens to the creation of the third order? So this is all given in the Bhagavatam in the third canto. So first, the original creation was manifested by Lord Krishna himself in the form of Karna Dakashai Vishnu. Specifically, this is we have to keep in mind as well why the Bhagavatam gives such importance to this. Earlier, I believe it is on the same verse I'll quote this. It's a pastime of the Lord that as we're chanting, Namah Parasmai Purashaya Puyase, Sad Udvava Stana Nirodha Lilaya. So if you know like a little bit of the word for it, it's quite easy. Ud or Bhava generally means creation, Stana means maintenance, and Nirodha means annihilation. So Lilaya, he as this creation, maintenance, and destruction, it's so Grihita Shakti Tritiyaya Dihinam. So the creation, maintenance, and destruction, and his acceptance of the Grihita Shakti Tritiyaya, these three modes of nature, is actually a pastime of the Lord. Just like Krishna has pastimes described vividly in the 10th canto. So similarly to Karnadakashaya Vishnu, he also has his pastimes. Technically, you could say it's a pastime of Krishna because he manifests Karnadakashaya Vishnu in an indirect form through Lord Balarama coming down like that. But this constitute all this creation is actually an aspect of Leela. So whenever we're hearing about the creation, it's hearing about Krishna's Leela actually. Even this, what's going on here, how Narada Muni is addressing of thou lordship, thou so great. He's glorifying Lord Brahma almost in a Lord Brahma is very great. He's the architect of the whole universe, and he did create the universe. But he's almost doing it sarcastically or in a joking. I mean, just like this, you create without any other's help, which is obviously false. But all this is Leela. Narada Muni is displaying the pastime of seeming as if he didn't know anybody's greater than Lord Brahma. So all of this fits into Lord Krishna's pastimes, both Karna in the form of Karnadakashaya Vishnu, and ultimately we understand that all of this leads up to the manifestation or the advent of Lord Krishna in the 10th canto. Just like I was hearing recently by my spiritual master, there's this talk on Bhishma Dev, and he was talking about so many different things from the Mahabharata. And it was very confusing, actually. I couldn't follow it at all. In the middle of everything, he says something like, we have to keep in mind that all of this is Leela. All these complex things that are going on in the Mahabharata is Leela because ultimately, pure devotees are involved, that's Leela, but also it leads up to the manifestation of Krishna. So just like you read it in the 9th canto, if some of you have read, there's so many different, even in the 4th canto, there's so many different dynasties described there. You may wonder why is this being described? Because it's all Leela, it's all an arrangement by Krishna, and directly or indirectly, for his advent into this material world. For not only Krishna, Rama and his different avatars as well. Just like in the 3rd canto, shortly, maybe not shortly, I don't know, it depends how you define shortly, but after creation, we saw the advent of Lord Varahadev. So all of this creation is not only a pastime of the Lord himself, it also leads up to different pastimes of the Lord, as well as different involvements of different devotees. Two, you could take it in the sense that Lord Brahma, Chaturmukha Brahma, he's a devotee of the Lord, and this talks about the activities of Chaturmukha Brahma. So all of this constitutes pastimes. So this creative energy, again, according to this Namah Parasmai verse. So similarly, there's so many different verses. If you study the Bhagavatam, practically, it's almost creation is talked about almost to a redundancy. That such detail is given from the very beginning of the Bhagavatam, or from the very beginning, Janmariya Sayato Vaya Detarita Startesha Vigyaswarat, etc. Like this. Prominently, more detail is given in the 2nd chapter. Sa evidam sasar jagre bhagavan atma maya sad asad rupa yacha so gunamaya guno vibuhu. So, Sutta Goswami says, in the beginning of the material creation, that absolute personality of Godhead, Vasudeva, and his transcendental position created the energies of cause and effect by his own internal energy. So this is describing Karanudakashai Vishnu. So, getting into, let's see. So, hold that a little bit. So, there's the first creation, second creation, and then later creations. So, specifically, I guess I'll go about it in natural order. So, the first creation that we've already kind of discussed, or should have discussed in the 1st canto is called creation. You may want to call creation. It doesn't talk anything about creation. It talks about Lord Krishna's wrapping up his pastimes, the pastimes of the Pandavas, and then it immediately gets into Mars Pariksha. Where's the creation there? This is the creation. Basically, it gives a glimpse. This is all you need to know, basically, more or less. Some other detail is given in other places, but simply put, first creation, the primordial initial creation, deals with Karna Dakashaya Vishnu manifesting the ingredients for the material universe. Meaning, what does Karna Dakashaya Vishnu create? He creates the Mahatattva. He creates, you could say, the Avyakta Jagad, the unmanifest material universe, the unmanifest creation. By his glance, by glancing over the material energy, the unmanifest universe comes into effect. And from this, so many different elements come. Prominently, elements come later, that's described, but prominently in the Mahatattva, the, you could say, grouping or primordial element of all the other elements that's created by Karna and Dakashaya Vishnu, as well as Ahankar that bewilders the living entities. That's all the sense of false ego. That's created. And perception, the tools of perception, meaning the senses, and the objects of perception are also created because Lord Brahma utilizes such things. So these things are created by Karna Dakashaya Vishnu. This is what constitutes the first creation. Mainly things are and kind of, we hear about the primordial soup, that's something, but this you could kind of take it in this sense. That things don't really have a solid basis. There hasn't been, even the 14 worlds, they're not existing yet. So that's where Brahma comes into play. Well, first, even before Lord Brahma is created by Lord Vishnu, is born from the navel, from the lotus flower, and he himself is benedicted, as it will be described later in detail in this canto, but he undergoes penances, as other speakers have described, for 100 years, undergoing austerities, and then he's benedicted as creative power. So there's not just one verse, there's a whole set of verses, which are very beautiful, actually. Here's one such verse, Lord Brahma's prayers in the third canto, 9th chapter, entitled Lord Brahma's prayers for creative energy. So Lord Brahma, he petitions Lord Narayan that for Lord Narayan to empower him with creative energy. So he says here, Isha prapanna vardayo ramayatma shaktya yad karishyati grihita guna avataraha tasmin sva vikramam idam srishjato picheto yunjita karma shamadam shayita jihayam. So he says, the Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead, is always the benedictor of the surrendered souls. His activities are always enacted through his internal potency, Rama, or the goddess of fortune. I pray only to him be engaged in his service in the creation of the material world. And I pray that I not be materially affected by my works. For thus I may be able to give up the false prestige of being a creator. It's a very beautiful verse, actually. There are many beautiful verses in this section, but this one particularly stands out because of this fact of this point of Lord Brahma is praying to Lord Narayan not only for the creative energy, for the function of creation, but he also prays hand in hand with that to not be puffed up because of the fact that he was endowed with the power of creation, to not be affected by the mode of passion like this. And Srila Prabhupada gives a nice purport here. One section, he says, explaining this, but he says, that is the way of becoming dear to the Supreme Lord and receiving his benediction. Foolish men want to take credit for all creations made by them, but intelligent persons know very well that not a blade of grass can move without the will of the Lord. Thus, all the credit for wonderful creations must go to him. By spiritual consciousness only can one be freed from the contamination of material affection and receive the benedictions offered by the Lord. So an intelligent person not only prays to Krishna to be empowered to execute whatever service he may do, just as the Lord Brahma or Sampradaya Acharya and the founder Acharya of the entire universe does, he also prays hand in hand that whatever I'm able to do, don't let me become puffed up by it. There's another purport. Let me see if it's like side by side. Otherwise, I kind of like can quote it a little bit. So I'll paraphrase because it's not immediately there. Elsewhere in this chapter, so Srila Prabhupada makes the point that Lord Brahma is a living entity, just as we're living entities, but he's Jivottama. He's the highest living entity in this universe. that living entity who incurred the most pious credit, who perfectly executed his varnashram duties, who was previously engaged in devotional service, whatever have you. So he's in a very elevated position, and he was given a very how do you say, a very responsible post, or a post that entailed a lot of power and a lot of responsibility. So Srila Prabhupada, he comments in one section in this chapter that simply because we may be entrusted with some position of not necessarily authority, but entrusted with some service, we shouldn't be puffed up by it. So Lord Brahma, he was entrusted with the creation of the material universe, but he shouldn't take. He shouldn't. His mood is that he doesn't want to take that for granted. It doesn't mean that automatically because one is given a qualified position or an elevated position or a position of responsibility that the qualifications necessarily go hand in hand. Just like for example, I mean, so many different things. People would just like just in Prabhupada's time and also now. Prabhupada. So many different things. Prabhupada would engage his newly coming disciples in so many different services. He would engage so many different examples. Pradyumna Prabhu, who knew Sanskrit only for a few years, he would engage him in proofreading and managing the Sanskrit, initially just the Sanskrit, but then heading up the Sanskrit department of Srila Prabhupada's Srimad Bhagavatam Bhagavad Gita. So he wasn't, arguably at the time, he wasn't so qualified for the position. So similarly too, Srila Prabhupada, one of his artists, famously is narrated so many times to make illustrations for his Bhagavatams and specifically for his Krishna book, and some of them, I mean, they weren't even engaged in artistic activities at all. They had never painted before in their life, and they weren't trained as classical artists. In other words, so they were given. And you see, Janarani Manaji, she kind of expresses this, as well as other artists, that we were being asked to depict these elaborate pastimes from the Bhagavatam with so much detail, and we hardly had any sort of knowledge. And the artists, they wanted to go to, they made a petition to Srila Prabhupada that we should study the form of Renaissance art, and how the techniques of different masters of art in the past, and then by getting that qualification, then we'll actually be able to nicely illustrate these paintings in a suitable form. But that wasn't Srila Prabhupada's mood. It's amazing, actually. Even though it's a very high responsibility to manage, to see that the Sanskrit of the Bhagavatam is given correctly, to depict Krishna's form and Krishna's pastimes, even though it's not a very cheap thing, Srila Prabhupada, he gave those people that didn't necessarily have that qualification, very high positions of service. Because mainly Srila Prabhupada's mood in doing so, and his mood towards the whole movement, was a kind of on-the-job training sort of atmosphere. Is that, in contrast to many different aspects, which is you learn something and then you do it, Srila Prabhupada's mood was that you do it and then you learn something. So therefore he engaged people who didn't have any sort of training in English and becoming editors. He engaged people who had very little knowledge of art and illustrating and painting paintings. He engaged people who had no knowledge of sales techniques and distributing his books, etc. People who had no knowledge of cooking, engaging in cooking feast. And the result is that it worked. The result is that, now, just like Rameshwar Prabhu famously narrates, if you hear his classes, is that if you look at the paintings in Krishna Book Volume 1, the original paintings, and the books in Krishna Book Volume 2 near the end, you see a drastic difference that happened with the and Krishna Book, it was published from, I'm trying to think, production started in 1969. I think the painting started in 1970, and maybe the second volume was printed in 1971. Latest 1972. So it was a span of 1 or 2 years, give or take, 2 years maximum. And you can see the growth of the ability and the talent of the artists in the BBT department. And if you look at the paintings they do now, it's mind blowing. If you look at the works of Parikshit Prabhu, of Abhiram Ramdas Abhiram Prabhu and the different artists engaged in the BBT, they're like, and, and they're like master artists now. And if you look at just as well, Srila Prabhupada again, he engaged young men who had were coming from hippie backgrounds actually, and again, and managing an international movement and managing, so many different things, managing a book fund which saw so many millions of dollars coming in and out, which required it's such a complicated thing, they were transferring funds to Mayapur, to Vrindavan, to Bombay, and then they were giving funds to New York, and then temples were taking loans, and then they had to print the books. It's not an easy job of management, but Srila Prabhupada engaged people who didn't know anything about how to do it. But the thing is, Srila Prabhupada, his understanding in doing so is that if you spend all of your time trying to learn these things, in the example of art, if you go, I believe he replied to the artist this actually, if you spend years studying, trying to understand the science, then what is the benefit? Because then it's just, there's no practical application. You may die in the meantime, and then what have you gained? But if you engage in Krishna consciousness immediately, then even if imperfectly done so, then it's to your benefit. So that is the mood that Srila Prabhupada propagated, and you see practically the result of it. So the central point I'm making is that Srila Prabhupada gave unqualified people positions that would otherwise entail very high qualification. And by accepting those positions and responsibly executing that service, then the qualification came. The qualification came later, just like we also hear there's an argument. First you understand the philosophy, then you preach. I mean, that is true. Or the argument is first you become perfect yourself, and then you preach Krishna consciousness. But by preaching Krishna consciousness, you become perfect. So that is the correct process. So somebody may be given a very high elevated position. Somebody may be, just like we see, Srila Prabhupada, he gave people, employed as personal servants, Harishari Prabhu, Shridhar Prabhu, Nanda Kumar Prabhu, who were relatively, they're only devotees for a few years, in becoming his own personal servant, enlisting them as traveling parties. But by engaging in that service, the qualification came. The central point is that simply because one has some sort of position, it doesn't mean necessarily that one should be puffed up because he has that position, because the qualification may not be there. That ability to occupy that position is simply due to the mercy of Lord Krishna. As Brahma states, actually, let me see if I can pull it up. Krishna himself says this in this chapter, actually. Lord Brahma, he offers these very beautiful prayers, and then I remember reading this. Let me see. Okay, yeah. Here, text 38. So Lord Brahma is offering these very nice prayers to Lord Krishna of, please empower me with the creative energy. Please don't let me get popped up. And Lord Krishna, he says to Lord Brahma this at the end of it, "Oh Brahma, the prayers that you have chanted praising the glories of my transcendental activities, the penances you have undertaken to understand me, and your firm faith in me, all of these are to be considered my causeless mercy." So Lord Brahma, Krishna's empowerment of Lord Brahma with the creative energy, they were his mercy. These nice prayers that Lord Brahma made to get the creative energy, they were Krishna's mercy. Lord Brahma's faith in Lord Krishna, that was Krishna's mercy. And what else? The penances he's undertaken, and his firm faith. All of these constitutes Krishna's mercy. So, so Lord Brahma, he was praying, please don't let me get popped up. And then Lord Krishna, he tells Lord Brahma, almost in a jovial way, it's like, everything I'm giving you here, even if you thought by these nice prayers you've offered me are so nice, these prayers are actually my mercy. So everything is due to the mercy of Lord Krishna. The empowerment is directly coming from the mercy of Lord Krishna in so many different ways. So that is the significant point. So position or no position, everything is coming. The position and the ability to execute whatever service or whatever capability one is given comes from the mercy of Lord Krishna. We should always look for that. Otherwise, in that same purport, I'm kind of like paraphrasing, Srila Prabhupada says, otherwise it's not possible to execute a service I mean, otherwise, that such successful execution of a service isn't possible. Materially, it may even be so. Materially, one may be a very expert manager and take to Krishna consciousness, but if he doesn't always look for the mercy of the Lord, even externally, if he's successful in managing, uh, whatever, a big business for Krishna, a temple for Krishna, a book fund for Krishna, if the surrender unto Krishna isn't there, then the activity is actually a failure. Because the internal mood, something is there, granted, but the internal mood or the real mood of surrender unto Krishna isn't there. So, Lord Krishna, he says, so yes, all of this is the mercy of Krishna. And so getting back to this point of creation I was talking about. So I'm not so expert on this, and this will be explained by other speakers later, and it's very intricate as well, but I'll kind of cover a general understanding. So there's different sorts of creation. So Narada Muni is saying Lord Brahma, he's expressing the false conception that, or in Leela, of course, that Lord Brahma created everything. But we understand there's so many different kinds of creation. This is given in the Bhagavatam, 3rd canto, 10th chapter, verse. It's a few verses, actually. I'll just read through them without reading the Sanskrit. So, there are 9 different kinds of creations besides the one which naturally occurs due to the interaction of the modes. There are 3 kinds of annihilations due to eternal time, the material elements, and the quality of one's work. So this is kind of like a nutshell. And then there's a detail given. Of the 9 creations, the first one is the creation of the Mahatattva, as I previously described. This comes from all that's going to be talked about now is coming from Karna Dakashaya Vishnu. So Mahatattva are the sum total of the material ingredients, wherein the modes interact due to the presence of the Supreme Lord. And the second, by his glance, obviously. And the second, the false ego is generated, in which the material ingredients, the material knowledge, and material activities arise. Then, the sense perceptions are created in the third creation, and from these, the elements are generated. The fourth creation is the creation of knowledge and of working capacity. So, like I was saying, the objects of perception and the tools of perception, the senses, and the objects of perception are manifest by Karna Dakashaya Vishnu. That's what's being, in simple language, that's what's being described. The fifth creation is that of the controlling deities by the interaction of the mode of goodness, of which the mind is the sum total. The sixth creation is the ignorant darkness of the living entity by which the master acts as a fool. So there's, I believe, let's see the word, tamasa. So this tamas is created by Karna Dakashaya Vishnu, this primordial tamas that puts the living entity in ignorance. And then, so all of this is Karna Dakashaya Vishnu. Then we get the Lord of Brahma's creation. All the above are natural creations by the external energy of the Lord. Well, I say Karna Dakashaya Vishnu, but actually all Karna Dakashaya Vishnu does is glance over the energy, and then all this happens, almost as if automatically, or as is said here, natural creations by the external energy. Karna Dakashaya Vishnu, he simply glances, he doesn't get involved personally. So now, hear from me about the creations of Brahma, who is an incarnation of the mode of passion, and who, in the matter of creation, has a brain like that of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So he has, that's interesting, Hari Medasaha, in the matter of creation. So this is Lord Brahma's creation that we'll get to and we'll understand. So the seventh creation is that of the immovable entities, which are of 6 kinds. The fruit trees without flowers, plants which exist until the fruit is ripe, creepers, pipe plants, creepers which have no support, and trees with flowers and fruits. All the immovable, okay, I'll just kind of skip over for sake of time. The eighth creation is that of the lower species of life, and they are of different varieties, number 28. But they are all extensively foolish and ignorant. They know their desirables by smell, but are unable to remember anything within the heart. And he says cow, buffalo, goat, Krishna stock, etc., like this, and gives examples. These animals with 2 hooves. So then it gives more, the horse, mule, ass, etc., like this. All these animals are created, animals with 5 nails. I won't go into detail so much, just so I can like elaborate on the creation. And then the creation of human beings takes place, where one of the species are of one of the species only, and who stock their eatables in the belly, is the 9th in the rotation. In the human race, the mode of passion is very prominent. Humans are always busy in the midst of miserable life, but they think themselves happy in all respects. So, To wrap it up, O good Vidura, these last three creations and the creation of the demigods, the 10th creation, are Vaikrita creations, which are different from the previous described Prakrita natural creations. The appearance of the Kumaras is both. So, okay, I won't get into that. That's different detail. I kind of want to just touch on the creation of Lord Brahma for the sake of simplicity. So, what does Brahma create? Simply put, with summarizing this, Lord Brahma, he creates knowledge in the form of the Vedas, or he propagates that throughout society, and also avidya. All of this is given in as well. I'm kind of loosely paraphrasing from the. I think that before Kapila, it is past times where Lord Brahma he's casting off different bodies. So he creates knowledge. He creates avidya, ignorance. He creates the 14 worlds. He creates different conditions of this world, just like we're reading today. So I read this verse. So nama rupa guna bhavyam. So all these things that he creates names, he creates forms, all these things inferior or equal, eternal or temporary, not necessarily eternal, but that's not exactly applicable. But all of these conditions are created by Lord Brahma. All these things like good, bad, rich, poor, ugly, beautiful, all of these things are created by Lord Brahma. Day, night, etc., like this. And he creates, as I we just kind of went through, different life forms. So many different things. Principally, he creates Shiva. He creates Shiva, and specifically the Rudras. They're manifest. The Kumaras, Prajapatis, and the Manus. So all of these come from Lord Brahma, and this is simply put what constitutes Lord Brahma's creation, creating these different things, and then this is what's primarily covered in this canto. So first canto was dealing with the Lord Karna Dakashaya Vishnu's creation, and then we're dealing with Brahma's creation, meaning these different creations, and prominently these different living entities as well. We'll read. Then after this, there's more creations, which you may not necessarily think of it as creations. So just like Lord Brahma, he created the Manus. The Manus also created in the form of their progeny. They created the different dynasties which are coming down. From Manu comes man. So that's another form of creation. So similarly, that's why if you've read the fourth canto, it talks so much about different dynasties and it's entitled Creation of the Fourth Order. Because these creations by this dynastic lineage of the Manus also constitutes a form of creation. So this creation, practically, if you see it, it runs a string through the whole Bhagavatam, from creation all the way to annihilation at the end of the 12th canto. Even in the 10th canto, when it's full-blown Krishna Leela, still that Krishna Leela is, if I can use some language, is narrated on the basis of those dynasties. Because Shukadeva Goswami, he's going progressively through the Sun dynasty and the Moon dynasty, and then he gets to Lord Rama, and then he gets to Lord Krishna. So when he gets there in the narration of the dynasty, then he narrates more. And once that's done, then he moves on with the dynasty, and then you read about the following dynasties in the age of Kali in the 12th canto. So this string of creation, it's Jiva Goswami, he says that these topics of the Bhagavatam is not constrained to one canto. So Sargam, Visargam, Poshanam, etc. All these topics, some cantos may talk more about them than others, but they're contained within every canto. It flows throughout the Bhagavatam, especially this aspect of creation. So that's kind of like a general overview of the process of creation. There's a huge section in the third canto that deals with this in detail, and you can read how from the Mahatattva comes, I forget the process. I know at one point ether comes, and from ether comes was it air, and from that the different elements unfolding one another and the universe coming out like that. And in the 12th canto, you can read the same thing in opposite, how the same elements they wind up into one another and then they merge into the Mahatattva and like that. Almost excruciating detail is given, especially even down to the calculation of time from the atom. So all of this is given there specifically in detail, third canto, for if you want more information regarding that. So that's all I have prepared. I can open my class up for any comments, questions, or discussion anybody may have at this time. Yes.
Hare Krishna. Um, so Canto 1 is titled Creation. You
Yeah.
were saying that in Canto 1,
Sorry.
Karnodakachai Vishnu's creation is explained?
Well, I mean, in brief, it's not like it is explained. Let me see if I know the verse number. Oh, technically, no, that's something else. So evidam sasar jagare bhagavanatma maya sadasarupa yacha so gunamaya gano vipuhu. In the beginning of the material creation, the absolute personality of God and his transcendental position created the energies of cause and effect by his own internal energy. And I think somewhere around this, anyway, I won't spend time looking for it, but somewhere around here, Srila Prabhupada offers purports explaining this Karnandakashaya Vishnu, Kshiradakashaya Vishnu, and what is it? Garbhodakashaya Vishnu, these three Purusha avatars, which presumably is given by Acharya commentaries.
Mm-hmm.
But principally, you could take it in seed form. This is described there in this verse because it is the description. Just like the beginning of anyway, there's Krishna Lila. It starts in the first canto, but it's also in seed form. In this verse, Gopi Adade Tvai Krita Gopi Adade Tvai Krita Gasidama Tava Deshashlu Kalinanjana Brahm. I'm just forgetting the Sanskrit. But Queen Kunti, she says, you know this verse. She glorifies Lord Damodar, that you're the fear personified when Mother Yashoda chased you with a stick. So this is actually the beginning of Krishna's Leela, but it's only in a seed form. So similarly, too, you could take it this is the beginning of descriptions of creation, even if it's not fully described in the first canto, but it's in seed form. So,
And so I see. So because of this, we consider Canto 1 to be creation.
that's my understanding. Probably, if I were to like review that, just like there's
Mm-hmm.
Narada's instructions on Bhagavatam conversation, specifically this one where Vyasadeva Samadhi. Maybe there's some verses there, but it's. I was saying during class, just like if you see, I mean, it's practically the first canto, the beginning, the first. It's a continuation of the Mahabharata, and then then it gets to Maharaj Parikshit, practically speaking. The only philosophy that deals with creation is second chapter. Third chapter is mainly avatars to my knowledge. Maybe something is there. Narada Muni.
I was just wondering if maybe Canto 1 creation referred to the Bhagavatam becoming manifested. I was just wondering.
I wouldn't take it like that simply, but I'll tell you, you could take it like that technically, but principally because of the fact that Srila Prabhupada specifically gave that illustration
That's
of the
true.
universal
I
manifestation on
was
the first
thinking of
canto.
that too.
And
Yeah.
again, even if you don't say specifically, it's described from the outset that Janmadiya Sayato Nivayad, which
Right.
is technically
Right.
you could say it describes
Everything
creation.
comes from him.
Yeah. So
Right. That's a good one. Um, so it seems that there are four orders of creation,
yeah,
which is why we say the creation of the fourth order.
yeah.
Um, could you say what was the first, second, third?
So initial creation, that's Karnandakashaya Vishnu glancing over the material energy, and the material energy, Karnandakashaya Vishnu doesn't actually create, but the
Okay.
material energy kind of like, just by his potent glance, it kind of creates in and of itself naturally. Then Lord Brahma's empowerment to make a creation. And then there is, from my understanding, the third creation is the creation of the different manus. And then there's, hang on, no. Third creation, I'm not sure actually. I thought it was the manus, but manus come from Lord Brahma, so that would be considered second creation. The definitely fourth creation is the creation of the manus of the different progeny, but the third creation, I'm not sure.
Right. See, if the third canto, which supposedly deals with that third creation, is referring to all like um, how Brahma appeared from Garbhodakasai Vishnu, and how the entire universe was manifested and things
Yeah.
like that. Whereas second canto deals with cosmic manifestation. Um, I'm wondering, see, if you could pull up that verse again.
Which one?
The canto 1 verse that you just pulled up. Gunomaya guno vibhuhu. Evam
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 Sasarge Jagate.
ja. What is that? I forget.
Sa evidam Sasar Jagate.
Sa evedam sasarjagre. So Bhagavan Atma Maya. Sadasad rupaya chaso gunamaya guno vibhu. So you go down the translation.
Yeah.
In the beginning of the material creation, that absolute personality in his transcendental position created the energies of cause and effect. So I'm thinking that just the aspect of Karnodakasai Vishnu lying on the causal ocean for the sake of the living entities who are
Uh-huh.
conditioned, that is first.
And then his
Second,
glance, and then the reaction of
second is
the.
the cosmic manifestation, which is the glancing and the
I
reaction
see.
and the
Actually, it would make
Hiranyagarbha,
sense. It would make sense.
Hiranyagarbha
Yeah.
and all that means outside, means before Vishnu enters as Garbhodakasai Vishnu into the individual universes. And then when he enters into the individual universes and creates Brahma from his navel, that's the third order. And then the fourth order is Brahma, is the Manus creating and other things subsequent, creation.
That would make sense. That would make sense. I would have to see like either. I'm
But
sure
of
it's
course,
described.
we should try to see some reference if there's something in this regard.
Okay, I can take other questions. I'm just kind of looking to see if there's a specific reference I can find. Yes. Abi, you can go.
I just want to clarify because I mix up the names a lot. Starting from Mahavishnu or Garbhodakshay Vishnu comes. Originally I thought it was Kshirodakshay Vishnu relates on the milk
No,
ocean, but
so
that's Karnadakshay Vishnu.
no, Kshir Dakashai
That
is
is
very
the
easy
land
to
on the milk
understand
shelf
actually.
ocean.
Bengali for Kshir is Kir.
Oh.
Kir means milk because Bengalis they pronounce it like that. So
Okay.
Kir or Kshira Dakashai Vishnu, he lies on the milk ocean in Shwetadweep.
Yeah.
So Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, he lies in the okay, well first easier.
causal
Karnadakashayi Vishnu, he's the original Karnadakashayi Vishnu, Mahavishnu, he's the original one, you could say. And within
Wait,
that,
so-
within each universe lies Garbhodakashayi Vishnu. Yeah. Because each universe is Hiranya Garbha, you could take it as. Yeah. Within the womb is lying that Vishnu.
Oh, so the first Vishnu is Karnadakshay
Karna,
Vishnu.
yeah.
I thought it
Mahavishnu.
was Mahavishnu or Garbhodakshay Vishnu. I thought it was, and so then Kshirodakshay Vishnu was milk ocean, and then Paramatma, which
As
is referred
Kshirodakshay
to
Vishnu.
as. I
That
thought
is-
Paramatma was referred to as Karnadakshay.
No. Paramatma Kshira Dakashai Vishnu. Even though he's located in Shwetadweep, he's equated with the same.
Okay.
That
so
that
Kshirodakshay
Kshira Dakashai
Paramatma.
Vishnu that's in Shwetadweep is also within the hearts of every living entity.
Okay, and so just one more time. So Mahavishnu or Karnadakshay Vishnu. Karnadakshay Vishnu.
Hmm.
Then Garbhodakshay Vishnu, and then Kshirodakshay Vishnu,
Yeah,
which enters in the as Paramatma.
yeah,
Okay, all right, and just
yeah. Technically, but principally, principally, the Kshira Dakashai Vishnu is kind of like more like equated generally. Yeah.
okay, all right, and just one more thing, when you're referring to when you worship Krishna, it's similar to watering the root of the tree,
Yeah.
and similar to the rest of the tree is satisfied. What's the verse for that? That the verse where
Oh, that's in the fourth canto. Yeah. You can start it. I don't know it.
like verse, and what's the verse number? That's what I was looking for.
It is like some random verse in the fourth canto. I think it's Prithu Maharaj or something. He speaks it.
It appears in 10th canto again. 431:13. Oh, 431:14. Okay. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Yes.
Bro, in the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says, among the Adityas, I am Lord Vishnu.
The Dityas?
Adityas.
Aditya? How do you? Among the.
Adityas.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, go on. I'm sorry.
And who are these Adityas and where they come from? Because I understand Brahma is one of them, Indra, Varuna. But who created forms and why Vishnu is there?
So-
And what is
Let me see.
The
Oh, I have to see
Adityas,
purport.
yeah.
So among the Adityas, yeah, I'm Vishnu. So Or I'll just quote Prabhupada. There are 12 Adityas, of which Krishna is the principal. Oh, that's all he gives. Do you know offhand the Adityas? Vishnu Chila Prabhu?
So there are 12 Adityas. In fact, um, there is the Dwadash Aditya. Tila, you been there in the Radha Madan Mohan temple, the place. So, anyways, after Krishna comes from. So, anyway, the 12 Adityas are the 12 luminaries, of which the sun is the chief. So, moon is one of the luminaries. You have different luminaries. They give light.
Varuna is also one of the Adityas.
Is it said that? I don't know. It doesn't say that.
Indra.
And see, it says moon, and then you have the other stars, etc. But the 12 Adityas, you know, the 12 Adityas are luminaries that are found in the sky like the sun, that are bright. And they give light to different parts of the universe. So
They're like sun gods, basically.
so why is it said that? So what is your question? Why is it Vishnu said, or you're just asking who are the Adityas?
No, I was wondering who created them because if Vishnu is there, Brahma doesn't create Vishnu.
He doesn't create Vishnu, but the position is created by Brahma. And my understanding among the 12 Adityas, of which Krishna is the principal, my understanding, and I can't, this is a philosophical speculation, is that the pole star, which is one of the luminaries in the sky, which is Dhruvaloka, Shweta Dvipa, is Vishnu's planet, is a spiritual world. Brahma didn't create that, but it is in Brahma's creation.
Hmm.
But the Adityas otherwise are created by Brahma. Oh, maybe it is explaining Surya Narayan. You know what? Probably that's probably true. As I said, maybe because says the sun is the chief, of which Krishna is the principal, and then sun is the chief. Okay, so you're comparing. Yeah, it's true actually. Krishna is the principal, and then the sun. So maybe it is explaining Surya Narayan. I don't know. I'm thinking there are other luminaries. What are the other luminaries? I was thinking pole stars, one of them. But anyways, that's again it's philosophical speculation.
Hmm.
I'm not sure.
Okay, I could give some time to the Madhajis. We have 4 minutes. Question? Yes.
You were briefly mentioning about during Srila Prabhupada, when he was here on this planet, how he would engage his disciples in things that they weren't necessarily qualified for.
Yeah.
But like we see now, at least from our limited knowledge, there's not so many instances where you have devotees going and doing like such like monumental moments of surrender. I mean, this temple is one of them, but outside of this, I personally haven't seen so much of it. So I was just wondering why that is.
Why that is? Well, one practical reason is that because those were pioneering days, and nothing was established. Nobody was trained. There was no facility to train anyone. Um, just like if you, I mean, there's the, even the hippies, they never, or not the hippies, but Srila Prabhupada's disciples coming from hippie backgrounds, granted, most of them didn't have a proper education or proper training, and even in like worldly matters. Maybe they're working some job, but it's like who knows how to manage like a whole temple full of devotees. So the training was in there, so it's kind of learned on the job. Now, generally within the movement, things are going on and things are more established, and generally things are so, okay. Just like take the example, managing a temple. So temple management is there are temple managers who are already there who kind of learnt it, and when somebody takes over temple management, generally they're given like training and things like that. It still doesn't necessarily mean they're qualified to run the temple, for instance, and it doesn't necessarily mean that even again, the qualification and the awarding of a position doesn't necessarily go hand in hand. That's still present today, but you can grossly see it or more prominently see it, just like there may be so many different things in this temple which are going on, and some people have a position of service they're not necessarily qualified for, just like Vishnu Prabhu, for instance. Sorry, he never ran a temple before he came to the West, but it was it's just the nature, and Krishna kind of creates this situation. So similarly too, I mean, it's still going on a mass scale in the sense that who so many different devotees are taking up book distribution, but like who's ever had experience of like selling things on the street, for instance, and who's qualified to like truly, if you take it in the true sense of the term, being like a representative of Srila Prabhupada and the pure kirtan of Srila Prabhupada, who is like in one sense you could say who is qualified to do such a thing, who's it's such an exalted position, in other words. But somebody newly coming to the movement can easily distribute books and like that. They can easily take up a service, even though they may not have proper like understanding of that. So it's still going on, but just due to you could say material things, just material conditions, just the fact that things are more established is less prominently seen. Although in some projects, again, there's the pioneering thing. When there's pioneering, definitely that happens. It doesn't mean it doesn't happen when there's not pioneering, when the pioneering is over, but there's always new aspects of pioneering in Krishna consciousness. Just like, who knows how to farm? Nobody. But Srila Prabhupada wanted farm projects, so somebody has to do it. So where that pioneering spirit is there's always opportunities. So, yes.
Okay. I got mixed up, so I want to correct myself.
Go ahead.
So the Adityas are the sons of Aditi, which are the demigods. So among the demigods, the best of the demigods is Vishnu, right? And so then you have, and then Krishna also says that Jagat Bhashayate Kilam. So among Adityanam Aham Vishnu. And then he says that, sorry. He also says that Jyotisham Ravi Amshuman. So the point here is that it's all opulences of the Supreme Lord. So Krishna is just talking about the representations. He's saying that among the stars, I am the moon. Doesn't mean that he is actually the moon. It means the potency of the moon comes from him. It represents him. So among the Adityas, among the demigods, he is the best. He is Vishnu. But it doesn't mean Vishnu is one of the demigods. This is the point. Oh yeah, okay. That's right. He's son of Aditi. So Vamana.
I have a quick point. So I found it. I actually had it, but I just didn't read it because I thought it was a different section. So Lord Brahma's creations. What is the third creation? Third creation is the creation of the demigods. Then there's the creation of the Manu, just like here, creation of the demigods, and then I lost it. Anyway, after that verse, it said it describes the creation of the Manus like that. So first creation is Karnadakashayi Vishnu, glancing over energy. Second creation, Brahma. Third creation, demigods. Fourth creation, Manus, and then the descendants, like that. So, okay. Well, 10th creation, the what I just read, the ninth and like that, Brahma's creation starts at the 7th creation, given in that list. So that list isn't like indicative, it's like two different numbering systems, basically. Yeah. So like that. Okay. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.